Yeah, I think Apple is pushing towards that, right? Because they're changing the privacy rule, changing the rules around third-party cookies and who can access it, and and giving consumer, I guess, more control over that, right? I think in the past, a lot of you had a lot of third-party applications on your devices that capture your usage and capture the information. You had limited control over that. But I think going forward with Apple and also with Google, they're changing the rules around that. So I think over the next 5 years, you'll see where consumers have more rights, especially in the US, around their data and who has access to it and who can use it. And I'm looking forward to celebrating those days.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Engatica interview series. I am your host, Jay Mehta, and we are glad to join you here. Today we have Nadine Manjaro, Director Telecommunications, IoT Industry Expert who's focused on data analytics and 5G on the show. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you being here. The Engatica interview series is a powerhouse of insights from the industry, and where we have industry experts and influencers from around the globe coming and discussing technology, AI, automation, data analytics, and whatnot. This program is more around bringing the community together and making the world knowledgeable about all these latest technologies and the developments that go.
Okay.
So we'll get to the question. So starting by it, IoT just started as a buzzword and has just taken over the internet since then. And it has reached a certain extent now. Where do you see IoT going in the next 5 years?
I think IoT will continue to grow. I think it's going to be more industrial focused. I think in the past you had IoT being used extensively, maybe in smart home type applications. You had it being used in smart meter for electric meters. Now it's being more pervasive in water meters and other kind of meters, right? So it's making things more efficient. It's enabling the collection of data to make things more intelligent. So, those who are providing the service has more knowledge about the service, and the end users also have more insight into how they're using different services. For example, with your energy, you can, look at your utilization of it, and you can switch, time of day that you do certain things to optimize your energy footprint. And the same thing with water usage and so forth. So I think with IoT and 5G is going to enable you to have more advancement in IoT. I think it's going to create more insights from IoT than has been available in the past. So I think, and you're going to have more consistent performance and a wider variety of IoT type applications, maybe those that are more video centric versus in the past, it was more of those that require maybe lower bandwidth, intermittent connectivity, and so forth. I think with 5G, you're going to have more always on, right, type IoT use cases, as well as more video centric IoT use cases.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of data being captured, right? And as we move towards more of these image and video kind of data transmissions over the wire, how do you see this progressing? Do you think that we as a world are ready to process so much of data? And do we have the technologies in place, or are we still lagging behind in data analytics for that matter? Because data analytics is quite an afterthought for most of the industries when we start with developing products for that matter, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think because now a lot of companies are moving towards storing data on the cloud, that provides the infrastructure, right? Because the clouds allow that scalability and lower cost storage than you've traditionally had. So I think that's going to make room for more data analytics, right? Because the cloud is lower cost storage, is cheaper, it's more accessible to a wider variety of people, but you still need to have the governance put in place. So I think with the analytics company, they probably have to leverage more of that standard data process in terms of the governance, security, and all of those things around it. But I think once you have those kind of framework in place, then it will proliferate more. And then you can use more of the insight from the data. So I think definitely having the data moves to the cloud, is going to enable more access to the insight from it. Because part of the challenge is you had various forms of IoT in the past, but the data still was located in silos. And one of the things that make data more useful is when you merge it with other data sets, right, to get new insights. And I think the advent of moving data to the cloud will enable more of that data aggregation and analytics across different data sets to bring you the new insight that's needed from the IoT devices.
Like with this addition of the entire smartwatch wave that has come in, right? So you see a smartwatch in everyone's hands now. Do you think that the data that, let's say, a smartwatch provides to you is something that is very easily consumable? Let's not just take the watch as an example, but I think all these data applications that are getting developed now, which are meant for the end user to consume as much of data as possible. Do you think the consumer of this data knows how to use that data eventually for his or her own good? Or is it still that that part of development of mankind on what part of data resources can be useful and what can be neglected can be still enhanced?
I think there's still enhancement to it that needs to happen, right? But I think collecting the data is going to enable like almost like a Google-like function. And as machine learning technologies improve, especially like the use of natural language to analyze data, I think as you go further into that space, then you will be able to get the insight, because then the user doesn't have to be a data scientist to analyze and use the information. So because of companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft and several of them, they're working on the technology to integrate, right? So natural language processing is already there. It's just how do you integrate that with data analytics so that it would be almost like how today we ask Google for a lot of information, right? You'd be able to ask the data or query the data using more natural language versus someone has to know SQL or advanced machine learning to query the data. So I think as that capability improves, then it would enable the end users like you and I, who may not be data scientists ourselves, to ask question of the data using natural language.
Yeah, so coming back to how we store all this data, right? So how do you feel that the existing storage, I think we started way back with, let's say, something like Hadoop, which was very heavy, required a clustered like architecture. Now we are moving to stuff which is, let's say, small centric databases like a SQLite, which can run on your mobile phone. So how do you see this enhancement, and how has this changed the way we've looked at data? And anything more that you would like show light on?
Yeah, I think in the past companies were they had a mistake, right? They thought just storing the data was just important, right? And so they dump everything into Hadoop, like you rightly said. And so Hadoop became a big dumping ground, but then they weren't able to use the data. So then what companies are doing is that they're moving some of the data from those big data lake, I guess is probably the word for it, right? To more intelligent storage. So like, for example, my company, Teradata, we enable them to query the data to get the most useful information and only store that data which you need versus storing everything, right? And I think that was the problem in the past. Everybody was just dumping everything into Hadoop, and then it became like a just big, giant, useless storage, right? So now you have the ability to query the data and then bring just the whatever is most useful to your organization, store that information, and then continuously update that. So as you use smarter, more intelligent data warehouses, or what they call in like data lakes nowadays, right? You can store the information, only the relevant data that you need. And so there still needs to be governance and practice around that framework that's needed. What data should you be storing? What data do you not need? Versus just dumping everything into a Hadoop-like structure, right? So I think as they go forward, I don't know about storing that data and processing on your smartphone. I think that we haven't gotten that advanced. I think it would still be stored in some kind of cloud, right? So you have Teradata now is in the cloud. You have Google BigQuery, you have Snowflakes, you have Databricks, you have a lot more of those intelligent, advanced data storage capability. And because there's still a cost factor to it, so you're not going to dump everything there, right? So it doesn't preclude you from having that proper data governance and that data governance framework that's necessary, right? So you still have to do that, but I think you're going to move towards more of that versus the traditional Hadoop like storage where they dump everything in one place, right? And then being able to query the data. Some customers are looking to say, we're going to have some data in the cloud, maybe still some on-prem. We're going to have some in AWS. We're going to have some in GCP. We're going to have some in Microsoft Azure. So having a system that's intelligent enough. So at Teradata, we have a feature called Query Grid and allows you to go pull the data from wherever the data is stored, right? So it doesn't all have to be stored on like Teradata platform. The data could be stored in multiple cloud on different systems, and we could pull that data together and do table joins, right? To integrate and analyze the data.
Yeah, that is something that could be very beneficial, right? So you could be storing multiple types of data at different places based on what is the best place to store your data. And when you want to query data from two different sources, you just have a connector that picks up data from wherever and gives you the resultant output.
You would have API connectors to the different systems, like you rightly said, and then you can do a query. But then, now I think a lot of the query is done by SQL or similar type of language. But like I mentioned before, if they have more natural language where you can basically write out what you're looking to get, what information you're looking to query, then once you have those API connectors between the different systems, it could pull the tables from those different systems and aggregate it and then do the analytics on it.
What I was saying is, we started way back with 2G internet, where we were which was something that we used to be very precious resource. And now with 5G coming in, we as the consumers are now slightly moving towards freely using internet, trying to use it as much as possible. And yeah, as you said, with advancement in technology and with more people using it, it is just bound to get better for the end user, help us capture more data and just enhance the view of the overall world, how we look at things around.
Yeah, I think from the consumer standpoint, the consumer maybe will get to a point where they have more control over their data because there are new data privacy rules that's coming into play where a lot of companies now can't just capture your data and use it as they see. So maybe in the future, I think the consumer will be able to monetize their own data and maybe be able to get, charged for the use of their data, whether it's, additional services or whatever. But there, I think it's going to move towards that kind of a structure, right? Where the consumer could control their content, control their data, and then monetize their content and their data as we go forward.
Yeah,
instead of the big companies doing that, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well, right? So it is your data, it is your footprint over the internet. So you are the governor of it. And it makes a lot of sense for us giving the data to someone and we being able to make amount out of it ourselves. It may not be a monetized amount, but yeah, still it's helping us to move and get to stuff the way we want to see it. Yeah, that would be a good advancement.
Yeah, I think Apple is pushing towards that, right? Because they're changing the privacy rule, changing the rules around third-party cookies and who can access it, and and giving consumer, I guess, more control over that, right? I think in the past, a lot of you had a lot of third-party applications on your devices that capture your usage and capture the information. You had limited control over that. But I think going forward with Apple and also with Google, they're changing the rules around that. So I think over the next 5 years, you'll see where consumers have more rights, especially in the US, around their data and who has access to it and who can use it. And I'm looking forward to celebrating those days.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing all your valuable insights with us. We'll drop out for here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll soon be back with another expert. For more content, you could subscribe to Engati and click on the bell icon for exclusive content.
All right.
Thank you so much, Nadine.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.